Hello everyone, welcome to the Scumdog's Kennel. I'm your host, Chris Williams, and in today's Cryptid Corner mini episode, I have more stories of the bizarre. In this case, folks, we have a story of this disappearing roadside apparition and another encounter with a Bigfoot. Both stories are intriguing, and we're going to get into them now. Let's read the first story, titled, Vanishing Roadside Figure, Germany's Mosel Valley flannel-clad man disappears near a rural village. Let's get into it now. Around 2005 or 2006, a couple driving late at night through the rural Mosel region of Germany encountered what appeared to be a lone man walking along a dark roadside toward a small village. The figure was also close enough to observe clothing, yet strangely lacking in facial detail, and within seconds of passing him, he had seemingly vanished from the road. That sounds thrilling, folks. Let's read the tale now and see exactly where this encounter went. Let's get into it and see what these witnesses had to deal with. Case file, date approximately 2005 or 2006, time after midnight, location rural Mosel region, Germany, setting dark country road near a small village, river valley, forests, vineyards, and hills nearby. Witnesses 2, the narrator and his then-girlfriend. Phenomenon, roadside human-like figure, possibly vanishing pedestrian or roadside apparition. Entity description, male, silhouette, red flannel jacket, blue jeans, or overall-style clothing visible beneath the jacket. Notable detail, no clear facial features, visible or extremely close range. After effect, witness confusion, girlfriend visibly frightened, and later remembered the incident immediately. It sounds par for the course, folks, with these kinds of accounts. Let's, as I said, read onward into the actual tale now, because this case file gave us the details of what these people are going to encounter and how it affected them, especially with the girlfriend who basically, afterwards, when she was asked about it, was visibly, frightened by the, memory of it. Let's get into it now. I had a strange experience around 2005 or 2006 in the German hinterlands. To put it simply, my ex-girlfriend and I saw what appeared to be a person on the side of the road, and then he disappeared seemingly into nothing. I have told this story now and then over the years, mostly because I still find it strange and in a way almost funny. At that time, my girlfriend lived in a very rural area along the Mosel. It was one of those places made up of small villages, following the river with hills, vineyards, and some forested areas around it compared to other parts of Germany I had visited. It felt much less touched by urbanization. Once you left the immediate river area, the roadways, and the occasional village, there was not much of anything for kilometers, maybe the odd gas station, but not much else. One night, we were driving back to her place after visiting some friends. She was driving. She had had only one glass of wine, and I do not drink, so I want to make that clear before describing what happened. So they want to make it adamant to us, folks, that they were not drunk, or in any way their faculties were impaired. But let's continue now. I do not remember the exact time, but it was definitely after midnight. The area we had come from was fairly dark with light forest around us. Ahead, we could see the glow of streetlights from the village where she lived. On our side of the road, there was the silhouette of a man who seemed to be walking toward that village. That alone struck me as strange because it was very late, and he appeared to be coming from a direction where there was essentially nothing. If you followed that road straight back, I think there may have been a gas station, but it was something like 30 kilometers away. The man was wearing what looked like a flannel jacket with pants or maybe overall-style clothing sticking out from underneath it. And beneath it as well, folks, I would imagine. That detail still stands out in my memory. Good. I'm glad to hear that this man knows what he's talking about, folks. Either way, it sounds like basically a very odd story here, folks, especially with the man wearing flannel. Why? Because it reminds me of various dogman encounters or werewolf encounters where the entity is seen wearing flannel like this, folks, like out of an old werewolf movie. Either way, that's just my view of it, but let's continue. The second strange thing was that I could not make out any real details about him. As we passed him, I was sitting on the passenger side and may have been only about a meter, maybe 3 feet from him. Maybe the lighting from the village caused some odd effect, but I remember not being able to make out his face in profile. It was as if there was little to no detail there. Between the car headlights and the light from the village, that seemed odd. We passed him slowly, then came to a street crossing maybe 20 meters or about 60 feet beyond where we had just seen him. My girlfriend stopped the car fully so we could turn right. Well, so she could turn right, folks. Either way, since she stopped, I thought I need to take another look at that guy. I turned and looked back over my shoulder. He was gone. The road behind us was completely empty. Now, you're probably thinking, folks, and, well, people have also pointed out, That maybe this guy just ducked into the woods, perhaps? It's an idea, but I'm not quite sure. Let's save off on any other things until after we read the rest of this guy's story, folks. I was not exactly spooked. I was more confused than anything. It was already strange to see someone walking there so late, in that location, coming from that direction. It was also strange that I had been unable to see any facial detail at close range, but now he was simply not visible at all. I turned to my girlfriend and asked casually, "Hey, wasn't there a guy just now behind us?" That was when I realized she was already staring back down the road too. She immediately answered, "Yes, with that kind of red flannel jacket and blue jeans." She had been able to describe the same figure as I saw. I would imagine she was kind of upset about this, folks, as I said earlier. Apparently she asked later on, and yeah, she saw the thing as well, and was almost, basically frightened by having to remember it. Let's see if that's true or not. We stared down the road for a moment longer, but then she drove us home. She was clearly creeped out and had gone pale from the experience. Years later, we reconnected on Facebook. I suddenly thought of that weird moment and wrote to her, "Hey, remember that weird guy on the road?" I had not even added any further detail yet, but she immediately replied, "Don't remind me." She remembered it right away. Overall, I cannot say it was impossible that we saw an actual person. Maybe someone had been dropped off after a late shift. Maybe he had a bad day and stepped off the road of the side of it anyway, after we passed, because he did not want to deal with anyone. But honestly, that explanation still raises questions. Yeah, why would he do that? Why would he care? He might have basically just, as the, experiencer said, he didn't want to deal with anyone, but it still sounds very reminiscent of other, encounters with ghosts on the roadside, folks, where if you basically take your eyes off this weird entity for even a second, they're gone. That's just my view, folks. As I said, let's finish off this article and this story before we discuss what it actually was. Why did my girlfriend not recognize him in a village of around 500 people if he were wearing work clothes? He would probably have had heavy boots on, so why would he step into the vegetation just to get out of our view? And how did he vanish from a clearly visible road within such a short distance? I do not fully believe in the supernatural, but I do occasionally think back to that night and still wonder what exactly we saw on that road. I am just glad my girlfriend was with me, so my memory could not simply dismiss it as something not worth remembering. KM. Good for you. He had someone to basically back up that indeed he saw something bizarre and weird. But that's just the first story, folks. Let's get on to the next story that involves Bigfoot. Huge roadside Bigfoot fitting on horse carcass. And discuss exactly what the, experiencer saw that one night, folks, where we saw this horrific scene. A Powell County, Kentucky witness recalls a late-night encounter from his teenage years that changed the way he looked at the wooded mountain roads around Furnace Mountain forever. While riding a Kawasaki street bike with a friend sometime after midnight in late November, the pair came upon a massive, hair-covered figure crouched over something dead along the roadside. What they found the next morning made the encounter even more disturbing. Because apparently this Bigfoot was feeding on the carcass of this dead horse. Now, you have to wonder, folks, why was there a dead horse there? You think someone who had basically had animal control take it away, right? That's what I'm thinking here. But let's read the story before we discuss it. I never have and never will care what people think of me. I try to be a decent person, but sometimes people just will not let me. I'm 46 years old and live in Powell County, Kentucky. I've had some crazy things happen in my life, but this incident happened when I was 17 and still in school. At that time, I had a 440 Kawasaki street bike that I rode in both summer and winter. One night, my buddy Nathan and I were out riding somewhere after midnight. It was late November, and it was cold enough that a jacket and gloves were really not enough. But we were young, so it did not matter much. We rode up Furnace Mountain Road, maybe 4 or 5 miles up. As I said, it was after midnight. We came to the outside lane of an S-curve, and there was something there that was bigger than both of us put together, even with us sitting on the motorcycle. It was bent over something dead. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can all guess what it was, folks, and what it was exactly doing. But let's get back to the story here. We passed it perfectly and pretty fast. It was simply huge. Nathan leaned up close to my head and said, "WTF was that?" I could tell he was nervous, and I was too. I told him that I did not want to know. By that time we were both about half a mile past it. I stopped at a little country church and turned around. I told Nathan that it looked like a Bigfoot trying to tear something apart, and he said he thought the same thing. Being 17 and stupid, I guess we decided to go back by it. So we went back the way we came. As we entered the curve, sure enough, there it was, still bent over whatever it had done on the roadside. I hit the bright headlight when we were about 75 feet away from it. About 2 seconds later, the creature stood up and half turned to face us. At that point, folks, these guys should have gotten out of there, because I don't think I would have interrupted Bigfoot and his, dinner right there, folks. It sounds like that's just the recipe for a disaster, or for two teenage boys to basically disappear. But, as I said before, folks, let's continue. Feet from it, about 2 seconds later, feet from this entity, folks, the creature stood up and half turned to face us. Right on by it we went, on the wrong side of the road, of course, and both of us were looking at it instead of the road. I nearly went off the edge of the pavement. Nathan was pounding my sides with open hands and kept doing it halfway back down the mountain. When it stood up, it was twice as tall as Nathan and me sitting on the motorcycle. I will not tell you that I could see its eyes, but I saw the rest of it really well. It was dark brown or black with light tan hair on its beard, chest, and abdomen, kind of like gray hair on a real hairy human man. It was completely covered in long hair, except for what I could see on its face. It looked like it had a long head and a long face. Its arms were long and defined, and it had tree trunk thick legs. I am not going to say I was scared to death, but I was freaked out big time. I imagine most people would be, folks. Now, it is something here. It sounded very human-like to me, folks, but as I said, we'll discuss that point after we read the rest of the article, and why I think this Bigfoot sounded more human-like than other descriptions. Either way, we went back up that way the next morning to see what kind of animal had been lying on the side of the road. What we came across was a very pretty horse laying there with its whole hind end torn off. Its neck was broken, and from the way the other leg bones looked, it seemed like a truck had hit it. Since that experience, I have been a Sasquatch enthusiast. I've always wanted to have another encounter, SB. That's fine, and you do sound very brave, SB. Would you guys want to basically encounter Bigfoot after watching him basically tear into a dead horse? It sounds like basically this horse was killed on the roadside, but what makes it strange, folks, is that you'd think that someone would have come across this horse and basically taken it away, right? The authorities, animal control. So why didn't anyone do it? I mean, it could have been a really rural area, and this horse had just been killed the prior day before. But you think basically, I guess the truck driver would have called someone. Then again, I guess he wouldn't want the bad things that would happen if he had to basically pay for the horse, basically because he hit it. Then again, the farmer who probably owned the horse probably accidentally let it go or into the woods, thinking it would come back, but it was then killed by a car, folks. It could be that this horse jumped over a railing or something, a fence, and then got hit. We don't know. Either way, the fact that it was killed and basically partially eaten by this Bigfoot, it's not surprising. I would imagine Bigfoot is an opportunistic vulture or scavenger, maybe even a hunter, folks. But I hardly ever hear Bigfoot actually attacking farm animals. Usually he stays well away from them. There are a few cases of him actually doing so, but they're rare. Either way, this Bigfoot probably saw the free meal and took the chance to take it. Either way, he was still seen by these two, teenagers, folks, so there's that. Either way, what about the first story we read about that entity? Was it a ghost, folks? What about the fact that you couldn't hardly see its features? Much like this case with the Bigfoot, they saw it could have had a beard, folks, but that's about it. This Bigfoot had human-like features. Sometimes Bigfoot look more ape-like, but usually don't have a beard. But I have also heard of a few stories of Bigfoot being described as more human-like, including a beard, folks, but covered in hair like an ape. Maybe this is what these teenagers saw. But once again, folks, we have to take into account that in both stories, the facial area was not well described, as if it were blurred or, blacked out. Do you think there's, something to that? Either way, it's very phenomenal. But now, folks, we're at the end, so please go subscribe to my YouTube channel, Read Comics They're Bad For You. You can use the YouTube link down below in descriptions or the chat to go subscribe to me. Hit that like button for me. Make sure you're still subscribed. Leave some comments down below. Hit that bell for notifications. Make sure you hit the part of the bell that'll give you all future notifications, and please share this video out. I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdogs Kennel. Thank you all for joining me. I'll be back again tomorrow with another great video, so be sure to come back again then. Until next time, folks, I'll see you all again soon.